قول لي يا ابني، الله يرحم والديك، ما شفتش الاله امون معدي وانت قاعد كده؟
امون؟ امون ايه بس يا حاج؟ وانت جاي منين كده؟ وايه الكرسي ده؟ الله، ده حلو قوي.
ده حمل يا ابني، حملي اللي شايله على كتفي سنين، وبدور على الاله امون عشان ينزل يقعد بقى. خلاص انا تعبت.
وانت بتدور على امون بتاعك ده من امتى يا حاج؟
من اول النيل ده ما ابتدى يجري في الارض دي. الاله امون قال لي يا شيال ارفع الحمل، ومن ساعتها وانا عمال الف وادور على الاله امون عشان انزل الكرسي.
يا نهار اسود، يعني انت شايل الكرسي ده على دماغك من ساعتها؟ ليه يا عم؟ نزله، اكسره، احرقه. انت ما زهقتش؟ ما تعبتش؟ الكراسي دي اتعملت عشان نقعد عليها، مش عشان نشيلها فوق دماغنا. بقول لك يا حاج، ما تنزل الكرسي اقعد عليه شويه والنبي، ده حلو قوي.
لا، ده كرسي الاله امون.
يا عم الاله بتاعك ده مات وشبع موت. نزل الكرسي قعد عليه حتى لو 5 دقايق، اجرب بس بيحسوا بايه.
انا ما اقدرش الا بامر الاله امون انزل الكرسي ده.
ما قلنا لك مات يا عم.
خلاص يبقى ابنه او خليفته، المهم حد يكون معاه ختم الالوهيه، دول بس اللي يقدروا يامروني انزل الكرسي.
طب انا بامرك اهو يا شيال، نزل الكرسي وقعدنا عليه.
تحت امرك، بس انت تقرب للاله امون؟
لا ما اعرفوش.
ولا معاك ختم الالوهيه؟
لا برضه ما اعرفوش.
خلاص يبقى سيبني اروح ادور عليه بنفسي قبل النهار ما يعدي.
اهو ختم الالوهيه اهو.
فين؟
محفور على ظهر الكرسي وباسمك كمان. يعني انت شايل الكرسي ده من سنين وما تعرفش انه بتاعك؟
على فكره انا ما بعرفش اقرا.
ما انا عرضتهولك اهو. بقول لك ايه، نزل الكرسي وقعدني. طب اقول لك اقعد انت وما تفضلش شايله على ظهرك كده، كفايه.
الكلام ده انا ما فهموش، لازم امر من الاله امون او حامل اختام الالوهيه، غير كده انا ما اعرفش.
قعدونا بقى، حرام عليكم بقى، الواحد حمض خلاص. شويه انتوا شويه احنا يا جدعان. خلاص الفراعين خلصوا خلاص، هيجي اليوم وهقعد. انت سامعني؟ هيجي اليوم وهقعد.
تلقى السيد الرئيس برقيات التهنئة من ملوك ورؤساء وقادة الدول العربية والأفريقية والإسلامية، يهنئون سيادته بفترة رئاسة جديدة بعد منافسة شهد العالم بأنها قمة في النزاهة والشفافية.
Hosni Mubarak was thrust onto the international stage in October of 1981. He was mostly unhurt, despite the fact that he sat next to then-President Anwar Sadat as he was gunned down in a hail of bullets. 7 days later, Mubarak was Egypt's president, a position he would hold for nearly 30 years. Under his rule, Egyptians faced economic stagnation, corruption, and a battle against Islamic militancy at the expense of personal freedoms. As the years went by, Mubarak became increasingly aloof. He appeared to be grooming his son to replace him. That fueled more resentment of the political regime.
البطال والمحتال والسياسي يطالب مزيد من الحريات.
أعلنت مصادر كبيرة بأن الرئيس التونسي زين العابدين بن علي قد غادر البلاد.
بتصرفي على نفسك منين؟
بصرف على نفسي منين؟ باخد 10 جنيه من الجامع 10 جنيه من الجامع. في حتة ليه في مصر 40 متر 40 متر باخد منها 50 جنيه
بس
بتاكلي
ازاي وبتشربي ازاي وبتعالجي ازاي؟
انا الحمد لله. اللهم لك الف حمد، اللهم لك الف حمد. ده حلوين قوي.
بتملي قد ايه كل يوم؟
بنملى حوالي 20 دور على دماغنا كده.
20 دور رايحه جايه؟
سين يه ته مربوطه.
في سنه كام؟
6.
او اللي هم الجماعات الفيسبوك.
This is Revolution 2.0. No one was a hero. No one was a hero because everyone was a hero. Everyone have done something. We all use Wikipedia. If you think of the concept of Wikipedia where everyone is collaborating content, and at the end of the day, you've built the largest encyclopedia in the world. From just an idea that sounded crazy, you have the largest encyclopedia in the world. And in the Egyptian Revolution, the Revolution 2.0, everyone have contributed something. Small or big, they contributed something to bring us one of the most inspiring stories in the history of mankind when it comes to revolutions. It was actually really inspiring to see all these Egyptians completely changing. If you look at the scene, Egypt for 30 years have been in a downhill, going into a downhill. Everything was going bad, everything was going wrong. We only ranked high when it comes to poverty, corruption, lack of freedom of speech, lack of political activism. Those were the achievements of our great regime. Yet, nothing was happening. And it's not because people were happy or people were, not frustrated. In fact, people were extremely frustrated. But the reason why everyone was silent is what I call the psychological barrier of fear. everyone was scared. If you know, not everyone, there were actually few brave Egyptians that I have to thank for being so brave, going into protests, as a couple of hundred getting beaten up and, you know, arrested. But in fact, the majority were scared. Everyone did not want really to get in trouble. A dictator cannot live without the force. They want to make people live in fear. And that psychological barrier of fear have worked for so many years. And here comes the internet, technology, BlackBerry, SMS. It's helping all of us to connect. Platforms like YouTube, Twitter, Facebook were helping us a lot because it basically gave us the impression that, wow, I'm not alone. There are a lot of people who are frustrated. There are lots of people who are frustrated. There are lots of people who actually share the same dream. There are lots of people who care about their freedom. They probably have the best life in the world. They are living in happiness. They're living in their villas. They're happy. They don't have problems. But they are still feeling the pain of the Egyptian. A lot of us we're not really happy when we see a video of an Egyptian man who's eating the trash while others are stealing billions of Egyptian pounds from the wealth of the country. The internet have played a great role helping these people to speak up their minds, to collaborate together, to start thinking together. It was an educational campaigns. Khalid Saeed was killed in June 2010. The photo, I still remember the photo. I still remember every single detail of that photo. The photo was horrible. He was tortured, brutally tortured to death. But then what was the answer of the regime? You know, he choked on a pile of hash. That was their answer. He's a criminal. He's someone who, you know, escaped from all these bad things. But people did not relate to this. People did not believe this. Because of the internet, the truth prevailed, and everyone knew the truth. And everyone started to think that this guy can be my brother. He was a middle-class guy. His photo was remembered by all of us. A page was created. An anonymous administrator was basically inviting people to join the page, and there was no plan. We didn't know what are we going to do. I don't know. In few days, tons of thousands of people were there. Angry Egyptians who were asking the Ministry of Interior Affairs, enough, get us, you know, get those who killed this guy to just bring them to justice. But of course they don't listen. It was an amazing story how everyone started feeling the ownership. Everyone was an owner in this page. People started contributing ideas. In fact, one of the most ridiculous ideas was, hey, let's have a silent stand. Let's get people to go in the street, face the sea, their back to the street, dressed in black, standing up silently for 1 hour, doing nothing, and then just leaving, going back home. For some people, that was like, wow, silent stand, and next time it's going to be vibration. You know, people were making fun of the idea. But when actually people went to the street, the first time it was thousands of people in Alexandria. It felt like it was amazing. It was great because it connected people from the virtual world, bringing them to the real world, sharing the same dream, the same frustration, the same anger, the same desire for freedom. And they were doing this thing. But did the regime learn anything? Not really. They were actually attacking them. They were actually abusing them, despite the fact on how peaceful these guys were. They were not even protesting. And things have developed until the Tunisian Revolution. This whole page was again managed by the people. In fact, the anonymous admin job was to collect the ideas, help people to vote on them, and actually tell them what they are doing. People were taking shots and photos. People were reporting violations of human rights in Egypt. People were suggesting ideas. They were actually voting on ideas. And then they were executing the ideas. People were creating videos. Everything was done by the people to the people. And that's the power of the internet. There was no leader. The leader was everyone on that page. The Tunisian experiment, you know, as Amr was saying, inspired all of us, showed us that there is a way. Yes, we can do it. We have the same problems. We can just go on the street.
Protests haven't haven't kicked off just yet. They're expected to start in the coming couple of hours. This is going to be a real test whether online activism in Egypt can translate into real action. Anger has been on the rise in Egypt for the past couple of years, but we have seen similar calls fizzle out. The main difference now is that these calls are coming after what happened in Tunisia, which seems to have not only inspired activists, but actually ordinary Egyptians, a dozen of whom we have seen set themselves on fire in copycat self-immolation similar to the one that had sparked the uprising in Tunisia.
Their demands simple: political freedoms, an end to state corruption, and a better quality of life for the impoverished population.
Anger had been brewing in Egypt for years now. The last 2 years we witnessed several strikes in the country, rising unemployment, sectarian tension was on the rise.
Well, I think anyone who's lived or spent time in Egypt would say there were plenty of signs that suggested that people in Egypt were growing increasingly frustrated. But I don't think anyone could have genuinely predicted that thousands of Egyptians would defy and challenge the government and its various security apparatuses.
What happened that day was that tens of thousands of people, tens of thousands of Egyptians, different parts of the country took to the streets. Not stationary protests as we were used to seeing here in Egypt. They were actually marching from one neighborhood to another at the heart of Cairo.
Are we expecting to see trouble?
It's difficult to judge at this early stage.
They started marching onto different parts of the capital, the strategic buildings perhaps that symbolized their plight or their agony, the ruling National Party headquarters, the state television, the foreign ministries.
The ruling party is the symbol of that as far as protesters are concerned and activists are concerned, which is why they're trying to stage this protest now in front of the ruling party.
Just listen to the chants roaring in downtown Cairo, the hundreds of people walking to the streets. It's unprecedented for people to march to the streets this way as an act of protest without security trying to prevent them.
The people we've seen taken to the streets today are not the 50, 60 activists that we've been seeing protesting in Egypt for the past 5-6 years. These were normal Egyptians.
Thousands marched peacefully in the morning. Their ultimate goal, to reach the city's heart, Tahrir Square. But then scuffles break out with riot police. They attempt to divide and conquer.
Indeed, Darren, this news just coming in. In fact, I'm just getting a chance to read the statement that's been issued now by the Interior Ministry. The first official reaction since the morning, blaming the outlawed Muslim Brotherhood group.
The government, quick to seize the political capital, accused their longtime enemy of inciting unrest.
The numbers estimates were around 20,000, but I cannot be that sure. We outnumbered them, which is a very new thing, a new experience to us. When we approached Tahrir Square, police tried to stop us, but our numbers just marched through them and they chanted peaceful, peaceful till they passed through all the police barriers. Definitely not the Muslim Brotherhood. Muslim Brotherhood announced that they will not be part of this.
And when I saw the street on the 25th, I went back and said, Egypt before 25th is never going to be Egypt after 25th. The revolution is happening. This is not the end, this is the beginning of the end.
Shot at us. They shot at us. Why? I don't know. Who are we? The enemy? Am I an enemy of the state? I came here to ask just for rights. I came here to ask for a home.
Shortly after midnight, that's when it became clear to everybody that the police, their patience was wearing thin.
A new dawn in Cairo, and a policing strategy in Egypt on a whole new scale.
After a day of mass protests in Egypt, the government has banned any further demonstrations. And there's a warning to activists of a tough crackdown if people do take to the streets again.
I'm very close to the press center. The scene itself was really calm, but right next to it is the Supreme Court, and there were a group of less than 1,000 protesters completely encircled by police. They beat them with the sticks and they shot tear gas bombs, and the whole demonstration was separated and they were running after the protesters.
So Mona, are the police responding to violent protests from the crowd, or what are they doing?
They're at a loss how to respond, so they are responding in the only way they know right now, which is beating up and completely turning violent and aggressive.
Reports flood in of detentions and violence, changing the mood to one of defiance. Our reporters witness the use of excessive force.
I actually have to move. I have to move. Protesters are pelting a riot squad truck with stones.
An official 6 p.m. curfew is ignored, and by evening, the mission to reach Tahrir Square brings together at least 2,000 people.
That square has been cordoned off today by the security forces. They're not allowing people to get anywhere near it. It is the symbolic heart of Cairo, and the word Tahrir means liberation.
Sure enough, by night, our cameras capture the scene in Tahrir. Protesters have broken through police lines.
The protesters have lost their fear. They are determined to continue doing this. It doesn't show any signs of stopping.
News that several hundred Bedouin in the Sinai exchange gunfire with police proves this struggle no longer belongs to urbanite Egyptians. Amateur footage shows a 22-year-old there apparently killed by a single gunshot to the head. With blood now on Egypt's streets, filming becomes difficult. Attempts to block media coverage, which intensifies in days to come, as Al Jazeera and other journalists become the state's new scapegoats. Shortly after midnight, internet and mobile networks had been shut off in the hope of paralyzing the protests.
The US-based internet monitoring site says it's an unprecedented event in history. The Egyptian government has effectively wiped their country from the global map.
And that's when alarm bells started to go off, because as soon as we realized that the internet had gone down, we knew that the government was in a very desperate mode. It was in a serious mode, and it was about to confront perhaps one of the biggest challenges.
Across the country, people had already agreed on more protests after prayers, calling for a day of rage.
We've heard reports from eyewitnesses that undercover informants from the government have infiltrated all the mosques, particularly those known to have a large Muslim Brotherhood gathering.
And it seems to be a desperate action by the government. That seems to be the feeling on the streets as well. Why is the government resorting to such desperate measures? Because if anything is going to push these people over the edge.
By early afternoon, our correspondents in Cairo, Alexandria, and Suez were witnessing deliberate violence.
We went to the mosque in Giza. I noticed that the police posture was very, very aggressive, and almost instantly they started firing water cannons. As soon as that didn't work, they quickly began to fire tear gas. This scene was unbelievable. I mean, we had essentially become besieged in the mosque.
We are breaking into programming here on Al Jazeera, 11:45 GMT, about 1:45 in the afternoon in Cairo, Egypt. Live continuing coverage here on Al Jazeera of a day of mass protest. They called it a day of rage. It is fast turning into that.
There were roughly 50,000 protesters as they walked through the streets of central Suez towards Al-Arba'in police station. The riot police sent 3 fire engines. The first 2 smashed through the crowd. They ran over several people in front of my eyes. That disproportionate force seemed to me like the trigger that made swathe after swathe of protesters literally throw themselves at the thousands of state security personnel and riot police who had gathered.
Medical workers in Suez count as many as 55 civilians and 15 policemen injured. Anger Friday told Mubarak and the watching world that actual regime change was the end goal, not simply the right to protest.
That looks like a trail of tear gas there being fired in the foreground. There comes another one coming down as well.
This is extraordinary. This is the capital of Egypt on a Friday afternoon.
Now the situation is worsening here by the moment. I'm seeing, in fact, in front of me, a bloody body being carried through the streets, a march following it, people chanting, "There's no God but God. The martyr is loved by God."
Hosni Mubarak is finished, and I'm confident that the people of Egypt will find an interim government and will move on. And I'm confident that this uprising will turn into a revolution that will inspire the entire Arab world.
راح الانتخابات الاقي الامن المركزي والبلطجيه بتوعهم واقفين بيضربونا. الناس لوحدها يا جدعان يا جدعان. فداك يا مصر فداك يا مصر تحيا مصر تحيا مصر.
I will die today. Will not be silenced. Whether you're a Christian, whether you're a Muslim, whether you're an atheist, you will get back your goddamn rights, and you will have more rights. One way or the other, we will never be silenced.
It only took them starting to chant and within 2 minutes of them starting to chant, the tear gas grenades came in.
We never expected it to escalate the way it did, because it seemed that the protesters were determined to push the police and the riot police really further and further down the road. The dynamic in Egypt is such that the Ministry of Interior and all of its police forces and various security apparatuses are widely despised in Egypt because they're widely considered as corrupt, they're seen as abusive. There's always allegations of human rights abuse against them. They're notoriously known for torturing prisoners, and they've always been, at the end of the day, seen as an institution that protects the regime, not protects the people. So indeed it was a complete game changer once the military had entered into the streets of Cairo. Everywhere you go, the soldiers are still very much admired, still very much respected. The military is still very much revered.
What was uncertain was if the army would take a side and which one.
Where I actually am is 24 floors above the NDP headquarters in a building not far from our bureau, but to try and get more of an idea of what is going on out there. Now, at the moment, the NDP headquarters is impossible to make out the shape of even the building. There is so much black smoke pouring out from it.
Probably the most iconic moment for me, seeing the National Democratic Party headquarters go up in flames and seeing it burnt out and no one coming to its rescue. No one even bothered to try and put it out.
A scene until now unimaginable. The symbolic seat of Hosni Mubarak's 30-year power ablaze.
مزيد من الديمقراطية وتحسين مستوى المعيشة ومكافحة الفقر. أعد هذه التطلعات.
Well, I think the impact of that message was it was widely seen as a little too late. He almost failed to realize that the anger and the protesters had one goal in mind, and that was him.
The headquarters of President Hosni Mubarak's ruling NDP party are still ablaze on Saturday morning. You can see the smoke and still some flames coming from the higher windows. Every vehicle in sight here has been set alight by protesters.
We saw the scope of the damage, and we saw that the city skyline of Cairo had changed.
By Saturday, tensions at the protests themselves had actually eased. Around 50,000 people, surprisingly undeterred by what had so far taken place, filled Tahrir Square, still hoping for their calls to be met for Mubarak to resign from office.
The atmosphere is one of great celebration and one also of great defiance.
Certainly quite a significant political development in just the last 10 minutes. Omar Suleiman, who's already being described as one of the world's most powerful spy chiefs, now vice president of Egypt.
Rather than conceding, Mubarak was installing a new government, consolidating his power. Tahrir Square now looks more like a pilgrimage site. Close to 3,000 gather as our newsroom receives reports that military orders to shoot agitators were so far being defied by soldiers. Our correspondents dispersed, melting into the crowds.
We are in the middle of Tahrir Square. You can probably hear above me the military helicopter. It's been hovering overhead for several hours now, at least from what we've gathered since we've been here.
And every time they circled overhead, it's as if they were flying a little bit lower, and it would make this incredibly loud, thunderous sound. So we really felt that indeed we had reached some kind of critical tipping point.
As fighter jets roared above and military vehicles amassed on the edge of Tahrir Square, protesters felt they were on the brink of a pivotal moment, either the bloodiest or the most unifying in their recent history. The standoff in Tahrir Square on Sunday the 30th of January embodied the wider conundrum. Who in the end would break the political deadlock? The president or the people?
Along the protest route, the army has taken up position. Tanks are blocking roads, soldiers are watching, waiting. It says peaceful protests will be allowed.
We call on you to preserve the resources and riches of your great nation and to stand up to any act of vandalism or sabotage. The armed forces are fully aware of the lawful demands raised by honest citizens, and the deployment of the armed forces to the streets is for your security and safety. Your armed forces did not and will not resort to the use of force against the great people of this great nation.
Trains heading to Cairo have been stopped. Those who've made it to the capital have been searched. President Mubarak wants to show he's moving on. His new cabinet has held its first meeting. His new vice president says he will open talks with all political parties. The aim, constitutional reform, including free and fair presidential elections open to all. Pro-Mubarak supporters have taken to the streets, but their numbers can be measured in hundreds rather than thousands. He has promised changes, but for those hitting the streets in Cairo and across Egypt, it's not enough, and it's come too late.
Egyptians expect complete and utter change. The barrier has been broken. The limit of their demands is basically the sky.
The lack of leadership means that there is no clarity as to how things will go.
We all felt that, Egypt had definitely changed. The images that were being beamed around the world had definitely changed the dynamic of the interaction. And we knew that by then, Egyptians had begun to break through the fear factor that had essentially paralyzed and crippled them for 30 years.
Slogans for change fill the air in downtown Cairo's Tahrir Square. But there's a new, different sort of change already washing away the past. Yasser El Said clears water left over from previous days of violent demonstrations. As the revolt sweeps Egypt, so is volunteerism, a newfound pride in a country that protesters say now belongs to them.
What you're seeing behind me right now is quite extraordinary. These guys are volunteers cleaning up the streets. They came out, they said, we're proud of our country, we want to keep it clean, we want to take care of it now. They said the last 6 days really changed the entire country. People are now out here. We talked to some other people over there who are cleaning up trash voluntarily. We've also seen people hand food out to other people, drink. This really is a different Egypt.
Making a difference comes one piece of trash at a time for this volunteer. And when his sign comes loose, a nearby woman takes a pin from her headscarf to secure it. This feeling of pride is contagious, says volunteer trash collector Mohammed Moses Soliman.
This charged us with positivity, so we can do more and we can help our country to be better.
These medical workers volunteered their skills to provide health care to the thousands of protesters packing the square. And to keep everyone well fed, free food and drink are being handed out. We are truly seeing a different Egypt, and it's a change that won't be reversed easily, says Yasser.
أقول لحضرتك على حاجة، إحنا 6 أيام بس، ال6 أيام دول هيريحوا جمهورية مصر العربية لمدة 50 سنة قدام. لأن أيا كان الحاكم اللي هيجي بعد كده قبل ما هياخد قرار هيفكر 100 مرة. لأن يوم ما هيجي يفتكر هيقول لك فاكر 25 يناير في سنة 2011 إيه اللي تم؟
While the people's future is ultimately uncertain, for now, they live in the moment and the pride of being Egyptian. In Cairo, Ian Lee for Daily News Egypt.
A group of young Egyptians are blocking the road. It's a sign of the lawlessness sweeping Cairo. The men are armed with sticks, knives, anything they can find. They say they're here to protect their homes because if they don't, no one else will.
We are trying to protect our families, our people, because we heard that there are many criminals, they are killing people and they are taking everything. So we are trying to protect our people.
A car approaches the roadblock. The men jump to attention. They want to know who goes there. This time it's someone from the neighborhood, and they let him pass. The army controls the main arteries into the center of Cairo, but when you get off those main roads, it's the people who own the streets. And the one question on everyone's lips is, where is the police? The police, a hated symbol of the Mubarak regime, are conspicuous by their absence. Since the bloodletting of Friday, they seem to have melted away. These young men hope that the president himself will soon follow.
Everybody hates that man, everybody doesn't want him, so it's over. We won't stop, even if we are all dead, because we are all in danger now. It doesn't matter who's at home and who's at the street, everybody's at the street.
Man march is ignored several times. It's been a week and people are not giving up. And every day, even the skeptics they come out and say, are people going to really come out today? And then it's always a bigger march. So I don't see that nothing can happen. I don't think that Egypt can ever go back to being what it was before.
Tahrir Square, while the week has been seen of peaceful protest, it is only when the pro-Mubarak regime entered that we suddenly saw this confrontation.
My name is Satman Sarzi, and right now I'm at the entrance of the square from the Egyptian Museum Park. It's a massacre that's coming in government cars, buses, in thousands. They have knives. They are throwing Molotov bombs. This is not a demonstration anymore. This is war. We managed to catch many of them. All of them are undercover police. There are 50,000 innocent people getting hurt and wounded and killed. Many of them are women and children. And they are all ready and prepared to stay here and die here if this is what it's going to take to make him leave. If this is what's going to take to make the world see that this guy is a criminal of war.
They managed to poison us so much that this is the outcome, that he's creating a war zone. This is sad. This is very sad.
Mosque just east of the square that's been turned into a makeshift hospital. Here, he and other doctors are taking care of wounded protesters.
We tended more than 3,000 patients in just 2 days. Criminals attacked protesters at the square. This is the hospital's pharmacy.
The mosque's overflowing with injured protesters. Some are treated on the floor, like this young mechanic from a Cairo suburb.
In the beginning of the night, all the injuries were caused by stones, iron bars, knives, that kind of thing. But at around 1 in the morning, we started seeing people with gunshot wounds. Some plainclothes policemen prevented us from taking necessary supplies into the square, like bandages and things. We even had to turn to some criminals, give them money to open up a safe passage for us to bring in the supplies.
Against Hosni Mubarak and his government. It's become a makeshift village for young and old.
Pro-democracy protests have continued in Egypt and mass strikes have also been taking place.
Will you leave before he steps down?
No. I'm not leaving. I will stand here until he goes.
My friends here, my friends, my daughters and sons here, and the people who are together, they want me to go home. I said, no. I have to stay here. Because if we are going to be beaten, to fight back together. I am 80 years, but I'm ready to fight. So we shouldn't go home. They are trying, because they have a strategy to frighten us and to starve us. This is their policy, to frighten us. And I demonstrated against King Farouk during the 50s, when I was a child. We demonstrated against King Farouk, against Nasser, against Sadat, against Mubarak. I went to prison under Sadat. I lived in exile under Mubarak. But I am here. I am 80 years, and we are not going to submit. This I have never seen. I have never seen in my life. So we have to sit, we have to keep our place.
The situation is very obvious. The Ministry of Interior unleashed all the thugs to destroy the cities. So people would say that they still need the regime. We don't want the regime. We want either a constitutional amendment or something that says that the next president of Egypt will be chosen by the people. When we say we don't want the regime, it doesn't mean we don't want Hosni Mubarak as a person and be stuck with someone else who's imposed on us. We want to choose our president because we want to take this country into the future. We're going to keep demonstrating peacefully. Even if we get attacked by the police forces, we are peaceful and we're going to keep on protesting peacefully until our demands are met. The youth are protecting their own homes. They are coming together and they are uniting, and everybody's coming together to protect their areas and their homes. We don't need the thugs of the police force to protect our own homes. We have proven that we can keep this country safe from the harm that they cause for us, and we have proven that we can take this country forward. People are cleaning the streets. The scouts are cleaning the streets. We want to keep this country safe. They want to destroy it. So we're not going anywhere until our demands are met.
So you think whatever they do tomorrow will stop people from coming to Cairo?
We are really hoping that what we've been hearing about the police force not interacting with the peaceful protesters, we hope that is true. We will be peaceful all the way, and they need to respect that and let us protest peacefully.
What has been the effect of shutting down the internet? Do you think it has slowed down?
Apparently, the effect, it had an opposite effect because people really did depend on the internet, and it was a an unprovoked thing from the government to do, and even though they shut down the internet, this is not just a Facebook revolution or an internet revolution. As you've seen, hundreds of thousands of people in the street, even though the phones even the phone lines were shut on Friday, and people still came out and demonstrated, because this is not about the internet, this is about the needs and the demands of the Egyptian people.
Are you afraid that they might do something to stop it?
They tried and they couldn't, and it's either they let us protest peacefully or else people are going to stick by their word and stick by their demands and not be broken up, because we have had it, and it's either they answer our demands or we are not leaving this square no matter what.
Is there a compromise that people would accept? Something that Mubarak might do?
The only compromise people would accept is that if there's a guarantee that the next president of Egypt will be chosen by the people.
That formed a ring around those who were in prayer, which seems to be trying to protect them from the stones that were being thrown towards the way of those who were in prayer.
On Sunday, Egypt's Coptic Christians gathered in Cairo's Tahrir Square to celebrate Mass and to add their voices to the thousands calling for reform. A protective ring of Muslims stood around the group as they paid tribute to those killed in the country's nearly 2 weeks of rioting. They chanted one hand, to demonstrate solidarity between Christians and Muslims.
Me as a Christian and with all my Muslim friends and all those around, we came here to say no, and we want that the regime will leave and leave the country as soon as possible.
This show of unity is a pointed response to President Hosni Mubarak's claim that only a small group of angry individuals are calling for his ouster.
I was detained on the 27th night. I was detained for 12 days, blindfolded, handcuffed, and I did not really hear anything. I did not know anything. I was not allowed to speak with anyone. And I went out. Next day I was in Tahrir. Seriously, with the amount of change I have noticed in this square, I thought it was 12 years. I never had in my mind to see this Egyptian, the amazing Egyptian. The fear is no longer fear. It's actually strength, it's power. People were so empowered. It was amazing how everyone is so empowered and now asking for their rights. Completely opposite. Extremism became tolerance. You know, who would imagine before the 25th, if I tell you that hundreds of thousands of Christians are going to pray and tons of thousands of Muslims are going to protect them, and then hundreds of thousands of Muslims are going to pray and tons of thousands of Christians are going to protect them. This is amazing. All the stereotypes that the regime were trying to put on us through their so-called propaganda or mainstream media are proven wrong. This whole revolution showed us how ugly such a regime was, and how great and amazing the Egyptian man, the Egyptian woman, how simple and amazing these people are whenever they have a dream. When I saw that, I went back and I wrote on Facebook, and that was a personal belief. Regardless of what's going on, regardless of the details, I said that we are going to win. We're going to win because we don't understand politics. We're going to win because we don't play their dirty games. We're going to win because we don't have an agenda. We're going to win because the tears that comes from our eyes actually come from our hearts. We're going to win because we have dreams.
You're looking at scenes that are making history right now in Egypt, and many analysts saying perhaps even in the whole Arab world. More than 1 million people have turned out to answer a call by opposition protesters for a 1 million-man march demanding that the Egyptian president Hosni Mubarak stands down. It was called Liberation Square in 1954, following the 1952 coup that deposed the King of Egypt. Now, many of those in that square below are hoping for a new liberation to take place as they demand the resignation of Hosni Mubarak. We are seeing hundreds of thousands of people turning out on the streets of several cities across Egypt. What you're looking at is the main square Tahrir in Cairo. Well, the protests against President Hosni Mubarak aren't just confined to Cairo, as I mentioned. Similar scenes being repeated throughout different parts of the country. Hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets to demonstrate in Al Arish, that's in the Sinai Peninsula. Waves of protests underway in Egypt's second largest city of Alexandria and in neighboring Damanhur. Well, demonstrations have also been taking place in the northern delta city of Al-Mansoura and in Egypt's fifth largest city of Tanta to the north of Cairo. Protesters have also taken to the streets. Well, they're also out in force in the northern industrial city of Mahalla, that's in the middle of the Nile Delta, and in the port city of Suez, which has seen some of the fiercest demonstrations, with people gathering there for an 8th straight day.
حفظ الله هذا الوطن وشعبه والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. محمد حسني مبارك تخليه عن منصب رئيس الجمهورية.
There are very few moments in our lives where we have the privilege to witness history taking place. We saw a young Egyptian say, "For the first time in my life, I really count. My voice is heard. Even though I'm only one person, this is the way real democracy works." We saw protesters chant, Salmiya, Salmiya. We are peaceful, again and again. Egyptians have inspired us, and they've done so by putting the lie to the idea that justice is best gained through violence.
نزلت وقلت انا مش راجع وكتبت بدمي في كل شارع سمعنا اللي ما كانش سامع واتكسرت كل الموانع سلاحنا كان احلامنا وبكره واضح قدامنا من زمان بنستنى بندور مش لاقيين مكاننا في كل شارع في بلادي صوت الحرية بينادي في كل شارع في بلادي صوت الحرية بينادي رفعنا راسنا في السماء والجوع ما بقاش بيهمنا اهم حاجة حقنا ونكتب تاريخنا بدمنا لو كنت واحد مننا بلاش ترغي وتقول لنا نمشي ونسيب حلمنا وبطل تقول كلمة أنا في كل شارع في بلادي صوت الحرية بينادي في كل شارع في بلادي صوت الحرية بينادي
أيادي مصرية سمرة ليها في التمييز ممدودة وسط الزئير بتكسر البراويز طلع الشباب البديع قلبوا خريفها ربيع وحققوا المعجزة صحوا القتيل من القتل اقتلني قتلي ما هيعيد دولتك تاني بكتب بدمي حياة تانية لأوطاني دمي ده ولا الربيع الاتنين بلون أخضر وببتسم من سعادتي ولا احساسي
في كل شارع في بلادي صوت الحرية بينادي 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 في كل شارع في بلادي
And that's not because of anything, but because we believed in our dream. The winning here is not, the whole details of what's going to happen in the political scene. The winning is the winning of the dignity of every single Egyptian. I had this taxi driver telling me, listen, I am breathing freedom. I feel that I have dignity that I have lost for so many years. For me, that's winning, regardless of all the details. My last word to you is a statement I believe in, which is, Egyptians have proven to be true, that the power of the people is much stronger than the people in power.
قيل إن كل ما يأتي إلى مصر يتمصر، كما قال شاعر العراق الأكبر مهدي الجواهري: حتى الطبيعة عندها تتمصر. في كل دقيقة لوحة ترسمها إرادة شعب وتتلقفها العدسات. حتى اللقطة الأشهر في القرن العشرين، رجل دبابات ميدان بكين السماوي، تمصرت في الثورة المصرية. أفلا تتمصر الثورة؟ لنبدأ من جديد. فقط في مصر يقنعك أطفالك أن تصطحبهم إلى الثورة بدلا من حديقة الحيوان. فقط في مصر يمكن لجينيس أن يسجل أصغر قائد لمظاهرة ثورية، طفل مصري عمره 7 سنوات. تم تحطيم الرقم القياسي السابق بواسطة طفل من الإسكندرية عمره 4 سنوات. ميدان التحرير يستعيد اللقب، أصغر ثائرة في العالم. تتعلم الثورة قبل أن تتعلم الكلام، فقط في مصر. فقط في مصر يمكن للعرسان أن يختاروا بين زفة في سيارة رياضية مكشوفة أو دبابة من طراز M60، الزغرودة والطلقة في هواء واحد. فقط في مصر الثوار في عمر جيفارا وجسارة جيفارا، لكنهم يبتدعون أغطية رأس لا تشبه قبعته الشهيرة. في التحرير التراجيديا لا تنقص الميدان. انتهز إذن هدوءا نسبيا بين هجوم للأمن المركزي وآخر للبلطجية اللامركزيين، وارتجل قليلا من الكوميديا كأن تلعب شخصية رفيق من ثوار الهند.
على الكرسي
في مصر فقط تستطيع النكتة أن تكون بيانا ثوريا. سقوط بن علي في ساعتين بعد وصول المظاهرات إلى تونس العاصمة جعل 18 يوما من صمود مبارك تبدو وكأنها الدهر. معاناة هذا الشاب لم تدم كثيرا، فقد تم افتتاح حلاق الثورة وبالمجان للثوار طبعا. تساءل الثوار ما إن كان تشبث النظام خارقا للطبيعة، فأضافوا للعمل الثوري ما لم يرد في أي كتيب إرشادات لأي ثورة سابقة: حفل زار ثوري لصرف رئيس ملتصق. لم تفرز الثورة قائدها بعد، لكنها أفرزت حلاقها وكذلك مغنيها ومنشديها. هناك ثورات مخملية، وهناك ثورات حمراء، وأخرى بيضاء، وهناك ثورة الياسمين. كان على الثورة وهي تمر في مصر أن تدرك أنها ستتغير وإلى الأبد، فالمصريون علموا الثورة كيف تكون ساحرة وساخرة، دامية ولاهية، مورة باللهب، مقدودة من تعب ومن لعب، محبة للحرية قدر حبها للحياة.
فإن المجلس الأعلى للقوات المسلحة يتوجه بكل التحية والإعزاز لأرواح الشهداء الذين ضحوا بأرواحهم فداء لحرية وأمن بلدهم، ولكل أفراد شعبنا العظيم.
يا بلادي يا بلادي أنا بحبك يا بلادي يا بلادي يا بلادي أنا بحبك يا بلادي
يا بلادي يا بلادي أنا بحبك يا بلادي يا بلادي يا بلادي أنا بحبك يا بلادي.
قولوا لأمي ما تزعليش وحياتي عندك ما تعيطيش. قولوا لأمي ما تزعليش وحياتي عندك ما تعيطيش. قولوا لها معلش يا أمي أموت أموت وبلدنا تعيش. أمانة تبوسولي ايديها وتسلمولي على بلادي.
يا بلادي يا بلادي أنا بحبك يا بلادي يا بلادي يا بلادي أنا بحبك في جسمي نار ورصاص وحديد، علمك في ايدي واسمي شهيد. في جسمي نار ورصاص وحديد، علمك في ايدي واسمي شهيد. بودع الدنيا وشايفك يا مصر حلوة ولابسة جديد. لآخر نفس فيا بنادي، بموت وانا بحب بلادي.
يا بلادي يا بلادي انا بحبك يا بلادي، يا بلادي يا بلادي انا بحبك يا بلادي. طير ملايكة حواليا طير، لحظة فراقك يا حبيبتي غير.
طير ملايكة حواليا طير، لحظة فراقك يا حبيبتي غير.
همشي معاهم وهسيبك واشوف يا مصر وشك بخير.
قالوا لي يلا عالجنة، قلت لهم الجنة بلادي.
يا بلادي